Hello and welcome to a Tippling Philosopher, another video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. Today has been quite exciting, or at least yesterday, the end of yesterday, with some news from the front lines. I'm also going to talk to you, as well as the front lines, about some unmanned sea vehicles, a boat, a sort of boat drone if you like. The planes and helicopters that have been lost recently. The Russians have had a bad day yesterday. And also about the difference between Grad rocket launchers and HIMARS, a little bit of difference there, and how they are used. Anyway, so lots more to come. What's happened? Well, let's go back to our usual map. There has been some movement in the Kharkiv, east of Kharkiv, in the Oskil River region, particularly at the north. So there's a place called Horobivka that the Ukrainians have made some progress east of the river. So the Oskil River has presented itself as a bit of a natural defensive line for the Russians, and I think the Ukrainians have been trying to prod and probe to see what the area of least resistance is and take advantage of that. And they have found that north of Kupiansk, as well as trying to push back in Kupiansk, they've been hemmed in there, that there is this place there. So there's a bit of a bridgehead possibly forming up there. Now that could be useful because the Russians would have to get troops, or they could bring them over the border, I guess, but take troops quite a long way to support that advance, and you could find that the Ukrainians could possibly do a quick advance where there isn't so much infrastructure and so much in terms of towns and settlements and Russian defense. So keeping the Russians on their toes. So that's a bit of movement there. But the main thing is around the Lyman area. So Lyman, down here, there's been a bridgehead formed just north of Lyman, and we're going to have a little bit of a look at that now. So this is a war map. As you can see, there are attempts all over the shop down here for the Ukrainians to try and break the Russian lines. This, again, I think is a case of finding the path of least resistance, a bit like water. And they have done so north here. So yesterday I gave you a map that looked a bit like this. And there was this small bridgehead developing just to the west of Lyman. And the Ukrainians were looking to encircle Lyman. Well, there could be a much bigger encirclement going on now, because further north here, so Lyman is here, we have Oskil and we have Izium. There is this salient where the Russians have actually, the Ukrainians have actually made some really quick progress. They've taken about 7 settlements. There is a town that they have taken, Karpivka, but that the Russians have taken back, and it'll be interesting to see by the time this has got out to you, maybe the Ukrainians have re-liberated it. We shall see, but backs and forwards there, but there is definitely some serious movement going on in this area. If we look at the map here, so this is the terrain map, so just to remind you what the normal map looks like, so I've zoomed out a little bit. Here is Lyman, here is Izium, and the sort of conurbations of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk and Rubizhne up here. Okay, so it's around this area that the Ukrainians have made some great inroads. If we switch to the terrain map, you can see that the forest line sort of follows the Seversky River and the Oskil River, and the Ukrainians have been using the forest defensively and to launch their attacks from. It's not so easy to spot people under the tree line, so behind the tree line. So that's been an important component of their of how their forces are set up here. But yeah, a big attack there that seems to be going places, and things are moving sort of every hour. So what I'm telling you now could well be out of date. They could be further on. And again, it's about striking while the iron is hot and making hay while the sun shines. That is pretty important there. As far as the rest of the front lines are concerned, not too much going on. Again, Spirna around here. There's the Russians are now sort of defending here to stop further advances of the Ukrainians. And again, Kherson is a case of attrition. Now, just to give something about a little hint about what might be going on for the Ukrainians in terms of Kherson, it could be that they are not so bothered about making too much progress here, because that will be painful, but it's about starving the Russians of their supplies. So because the Russians can't get supplies across this river, Ukraine keep hitting pontoons and ferries and bridges. That is happening every day. That's happening all the time. The Russians are not getting meaningful supplies across, which means they will run out of shells. They will run out of ammunition, and at that point, that's when the Ukrainians can move. So it might be that the Ukrainians aren't putting in big efforts to move particularly great distances here, because it's the long game of waiting. It's almost like a siege mentality, waiting until they run out of supplies and then hitting. Okay, so let's just return to this front, because there's more to be said about what happened up here. Now, when the Ukrainians attacked in this in the Lyman area, and they forced this bridgehead, the Russians replied with air defense. So that was a main form of trying to hit the Ukrainians. Now, in one single day, they lost 5 units. They lost a Kar-52 Alligator helicopter, which looks something like let's find that, which looks like that. It's an Apache equivalent twin rotor helicopter, the deadliest helicopter Russia has ever produced, so this article says. Now, that multi-role helicopter was one of them was taken out. To give you an example of what one getting taken out might look like. Now, here is an example not from the one that was lost yesterday, but from the 22nd, just to give you an example of the sort of thing that happens. This is hit by man pads. You can see 2 man pads, which are handheld, shoulder mounted, usually rocket launchers that send up a rocket to take out low flying aircraft. They've got usually a range of about 5 kilometers. Let's have a look at what's going on here. So we have a helicopter there. There are actually 2 helicopters. Now, here, did you see just there? I'm going to rewind that. There was a man pad shot from the left of the helicopter over here, right, in this field. So it zooms in this field over there, hits him, and he then sends out flares. There is another shot from over here by the looks of it, another man pad shot. Because we then see another helicopter coming around soon, I think. But there, just at the bottom there, it's not been hit. So it probably might release flares that sent off the scent of the helicopter so that the flares attack that. Anyway, this helicopter looks like it made a bit of a crash landing. I'm unsure of what happened to the crew, but that's a Kar-52 helicopter taken out of action, which is obviously a vast amount of money and a good degree of capability, thus alleviating the Ukrainians from being attacked by it. So there you go. That's what it would look like. Something like those are man pads being fired from fields. But what has happened is they've lost one KA or Kar-52 helicopter, and as well as that, they have lost 2 Su-34s, 1 Su-30 and 1 Su-25. What are these? Well, let me show you. So they lost 2 of these Su-34s. These are strike fighters. One of these Su-25s, much older aircraft from the 70s originally. This is sort of 2006 onwards. 2 of those, and a Su-30, another modern multi-role fighter. And to lose 4 of these jets and 1 helicopter is absolutely unthinkable. It's just insane. So we actually have some footage of these to show you. So I'm going to show you this these don't have sound. It has music in the background, which I've muted. So this plane gets hit again by man pads by the looks of it, and then they're hit there, and you can see there 2 parachutes coming out that are landing slowly. So really low altitude parachutes. So those guys may or may not have survived, don't know. And whether they were captured afterwards, one is unsure. At least at the moment. I've seen some wreckage of one of the Sus, and pretty devastating obliteration. So that is that one taken out. There is also so those are the aircraft that were taken out, the ones I've shown you in other pictures. And here is another Su getting hit, and this again shows an engine that has been hit. So we don't see it actually being hit, but that's an engine that's not looking good. So whether he makes a crash landing, whether he gets back to his landing strip is I don't know from this footage, but he's in a lot of trouble. That plane's not going to be flying anytime soon. So there you go. So that is absolutely critical for the Russians to lose 5 units in one day is a massive problem. The other thing to show you just quickly is something I meant to show the other day, but I just didn't. I ran out of time. So this was found on September the 21st off Crimea, right near Sevastopol. Just to remind you where that is, Sevastopol is down in Crimea, down there. So here is an unmanned vessel. Now, whether this was built by the Ukrainians or was given to them, now we know that much early on in the campaign they were given unmanned vessels by NATO. I don't even know, it might even be the UK, but UK or US, I think. So here is an unmanned sort of sea vessel, a drone of the seas, if you like, and it was found sort of washed up, whatever reason we don't know, and it was actually taken out to sea and blown up by the Russians because it had a warhead on board, so it was thought. Now we know very little about this. That's the sort of size of that vehicle. You know, first revealed on September the 21st, the small boat is completely uncrewed. It carries a warhead inside the hull. It has a lower profile than the other designs. So these are other sort of comparable designs from other nations. Looks pretty sophisticated. Okay, so that is something that is possibly being used at the moment. Who knows? Obviously, there's going to be operational security going on. Okay, so the one thing I was just going to add today was a little chat about a Grad versus HIMARS. So what is a Grad? Well, let me show you what a Grad looks like. There's a Grad that's been sort of blown up. These are multiple rocket launch sort of systems. There's a slightly updated Grad called a Tornado G. It has slightly more automation. You can see it's got a lot of rockets on board, and they can even be adapted to have several of them on the back. So that's 3 on the back of a truck, basically, four-wheel drive, and they get launched in batteries, sort of volleys that are pretty devastating. They certainly look devastating. Here's a video to show you. So those look really pretty devastating, and they certainly have a psychological impact. Here is a bunch of rockets that were captured by the Ukrainians. You think, wow, that's a heck of a lot of rockets there. Look at all that ordnance, 300 plus. But then when you see how quickly they are fired off, that doesn't last very long at all. Pretty devastating. And here's I'll find you the video I want to show. So I just wanted to show you this. Here is Kharkiv being hit by Grad rockets right back at the beginning of the campaign. And as you can see, she's pretty emotional there, obviously having Kharkiv hit by those sort of rockets very quickly. Now, they are pretty devastating, but actually those are, broadly speaking, dumb munitions, which means they are fired off, pointed in the right direction, and they hopefully hit the target, the objective. What Ukraine have been given recently are these HIMARS that fire few of them, but these are guided munitions, and there's a massive difference. And not only that, these I think can be self-loaded. So with Grads, they have to have a loader vehicle to go with them and load on their missiles. These, once the missiles are there, so they can just be dropped off with a truck, and I think they can be self-loaded, but I may be wrong. So these and other multiple rocket launcher systems that the UK and the US and other nations, US have provided the HIMARS, but other systems that are almost comparable are there. And at the moment, they are producing sort of, I think it's about 40-mile distance rockets. They're not. They can fire these ATACMS, which can go 300 kilometers, but at the moment they don't have those. So that is a bit of elbow room or a bit of headroom, if you like, for the Ukrainians to go somewhere else to be able to be given more capability. I talked about capability against capacity yesterday. So here is definitely a greater capability, because these have pinpoint accuracy. There's a really big difference to the way these are used, to the way that the Russians kind of indiscriminately use, sorry, I'm just trying to find the right one, indiscriminately use these to attack often, even civilian targets. And there are so many scenes you see of like pockmarked holes all over the place from either Grads or artillery, just used in very much a dumb munition way. Dumb munition means that they are not guided. There's no intelligence software on board that either on the thing that fires them or on the ordnance itself that tells it to go somewhere. It fires on the trajectory it's fired and will land where it will land. And Russia use a lot of this. Now, this guy here is going to talk a little bit about the HIMARS and other multiple rocket launch systems.
Now, the weapon I think we've heard the most of, which appears to have had the most significant difference, is the HIMARS system, also sometimes referred to as the MLRS or the GMLRS. These are effectively the same weapons. They are vehicle-mounted rocket launchers. The HIMARS is on a vehicle that has wheels. The MLRS is on a vehicle that has tracks. Both of them fire these guided rockets, which have a range of about 40 miles. The same system, the same vehicles can also fire a US-made Army tactical missile system, which has a range of some 300 kilometers. Now that's a significant difference, but at the moment, the rockets the Ukrainians have can shoot about 40 miles. Now that has been very significant, because that's allowed the Ukrainians to fire beyond the front lines, significantly beyond the front lines, to hit Russian ammo dumps, Russian command posts, and disrupt Russian operations from behind the front lines.
Okay, so that's just a little something to show you about those HIMARS systems and the other multiple rocket launch systems that are really providing great use for the Ukrainians. They also have these pieces of artillery units. So this is a wheeled artillery unit called a Caesar. This is from France, and these have, again, a much greater range than any of the Russian artillery. Again, I think it's maybe 40 kilometers for these. And that means that what happened is Snake Island, that was 20 kilometers off the Snake Island, which, goodness, it's somewhere around here, 20k off the coast. They could actually place them anywhere 20k backwards from there, and they actually hit Snake Island with these Caesars, right? And that was how they eventually recaptured Snake Island, because the Russians couldn't stand keeping on being hit by these pieces of artillery. They didn't hit them with rockets; they hit them with artillery. And these Caesars, because they're shoot and scoot, you can shoot and then just drive off. Essentially, and that's a real advantage to these, not only the range. So this chap talked about the difference between some of the MRLS systems that are tracked, and that means, so the HIMARS are wheeled. That generally means they're quicker. Tracked is slower, but they can cope with better terrain, so more difficult terrain more effectively. So they have different advantages. The HIMARS literally can shoot off the road, though. I mean, this is what they've been seen to do. There's the footage that was shown in that video of the HIMARS literally shooting off the road, that's great. You can just drive up to somewhere, get your targets, due to the fact that the Ukrainians have got such good intelligence and real-time intelligence from satellite imagery, and they hit their targets and then drive off. Job done. And that is why the Ukrainians still have all the HIMARS they were initially given, as far as I understand. And that really shows you the difference in how these two sides are going about doing their warfare. And this goes back to what we were talking about yesterday. The Ukrainians have capability, even if they have fewer armaments. So they can, with much greater precision, take out depots and take out really important pieces of equipment, whereas the Russians just are flattening places with massive attacks of things like Grads and artillery. And these have a great psychological impact, particularly on civilians, as they're being used in that way, but they are not actually as effective as they might look. In the way that they look terrifying, then they're arguably not as effective as the HIMARS systems and the other multiple rocket launch systems that Ukraine are using, given from the NATO forces. Anyway, I just thought I'd show you a little bit of the difference in capability there that they have. But you see all the time, you see these vehicles being hit and blown up. I only have to go back to good old Ukraine weapons tracker, and you'll see on a daily basis. I mean, this is what I look at every day, and I think, what's been blown up today? T-90 tank gets stuck. So 2 Russian T-90. So those are the 2 really their most modern tanks, stuck and unmoving. T-80. It's just understanding what all these things are. Here, the Ka-52, the Su's getting hit. And then you have these mines. These are rocket dropped mines. So these are sent up by rockets and then dropped by sort of almost parachute, and then they embed themselves. And mines are really interesting. So I just spend a couple of minutes on this. So people think, those are really obvious to see. Actually, they're slightly bigger than they really are. It's just a perspective. And they have really delicate triggers, these particular ones. But mines aren't so much about blowing stuff up. Mines are about slowing people down through blocking corridors of transport. So what they'll do is they'll drop a load of these mines all over the shop, and it means that the Russians can't advance without getting a specific mine demining vehicle, and very slowly having to demine these areas, and that could set you back a couple of days. Or however long. It depends how much they've done these things. So don't always think that mines are about blowing stuff up. Of course they do that, but it's about slowing forces down. So again, T-80, I'm just trying to find Su-34, BTR. So these are these APC, armored personnel carrier, and a mine clearing vehicle. So here you get what literally just been talking about. So that's an APC, and looks like a mine clearing vehicle that has been taken out. So obviously that means their capabilities of removing mines are taken back. A COTS drone. This is a commercial off-the-shelf drone. So literally you could buy that from a commercial company. It's not a military drone, and they just attach munitions to them and drop them on the top of tanks and other vehicles, which is exactly what's happening there. So loads of acronyms. These manpads, these are the shoulder-held rockets. Auto cannon on top of a vehicle that can shoot at aeroplanes, and this is taken out by a javelin, which is another shoulder-held. You can see it coming in there. and it goes on top, it goes above and then goes down into the vehicle and blows it all up inside. So, you know, this is what I spend a lot of my day going through, is looking at what stuff has been blown up and captured, army personnel. Here is, I talk about the Iranian drones. This is another type of a much larger Iranian drone that has supposedly been taken down, maybe through electronic warfare. Sometimes you can get drones to just fall out of the sky by sort of stopping them using high-tech electronic warfare, and this has dropped into the water. Mojer 6 one, which is similar to the Bayraktar but not as good, and that has dropped into the sea and been found. So loads of stuff. I was just trying to see if I could find any grads that have been found, because you know they're all over the shop, these grads. More drones. Those are those rockets I showed you, and yeah, there you go. A grad, an infantry fighting vehicle, and transport truck. So let's see if we can see what the grad is. Bit of a test here. So that looks like a tank. Goodness knows what that was. Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure. And we've got an infantry fighting vehicle, and that is a truck. So that looks like it was a grad, a multiple rocket launcher, which is just blown up, doesn't have any of its stuff on the back. So there you go. Anyway, I hope that was somewhat useful and interesting. This is one of my favourite Twitter feeds or Twitter handles, Ukraine Weapons Tracker. Always worth hanging around on that and losing yourself for a long time. Anyway, I hope this has been useful. Do like, subscribe and share and all that lovely stuff. Really appreciate all of your help. And sorry if my sound levels aren't always perfect, because I switch between, you know, headset and a microphone depending on whether I want to listen to sounds with you or whatever. So today, you know, that was the situation. But I do what I can. Thank you again. Take care, and until next time, goodbye.